I've been driving trucks for 20 years now, crisscrossing this country more times than I care to count. The stretches of highway between Tulsa and Amarillo had become as familiar to me as the lines on my weathered palms. That particular night was no different. Clear skies, quarter moon, and the comforting hum of 18 wheels beneath me. My thermos was full of coffee, strong and black just the way I liked it. The radio crackled with late-night talk shows, keeping me company as the white lines disappeared under my rig. Nothing about that evening suggested it would be my last normal haul. Nothing at all. It appeared out of nowhere, a dense wall of fog that stretched across the highway like a living thing. I'd driven through fog before plenty of times, but this was different. This fog seemed to swallow the beam of my headlights, consuming the light rather than reflecting it. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield as visibility dropped to mere feet. The truck's engine seemed to labor as if pushing through something thicker than air. My radio died without warning, replaced by a static so harsh it made my teeth ache. I reached to turn it off, and that's when I noticed the mile marker, 387. It stood clear in the fog, illuminated by some light I couldn't identify. The strange thing was I just passed mile marker 386, and the next should have been 388. Help me. The words came through the static, clear as day. A child's voice, trembling and afraid. I nearly swerved off the road, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. Please help me. I'm lost. I pulled over, the fog so thick now I couldn't see the hood of my truck. Common sense told me to stay put, to call highway patrol, but my phone showed no signal. The voice came again, not from the radio this time, but from somewhere outside. I'm cold. Please help me. Against every instinct for self-preservation, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down from the cab. The fog wrapped around me like damp cotton, and the temperature dropped so suddenly my breath clouded in front of my face. The beam of my flashlight cut through the fog like a dull knife, illuminating maybe 3 feet ahead. I called out, hearing my voice swallowed by the unnatural quiet. No passing cars, no distant sounds of nature. Just silence and that child's voice, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. I walked along the roadside, calling out reassurances, promising help. The mile marker 387 remained visible no matter how far I walked, as if it were following me. Or as if I wasn't moving at all. The voice grew more desperate, more pleading, drawing me further from my truck. I should have recognized the trap. God help me, I should have known. I found a small red shoe sitting in the middle of the road. Children's size, worn at the heels, with a cartoon character I didn't recognize faded on the side. It was bone dry despite the dampness of the fog. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. It's mine, came the voice directly behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam catching nothing but swirling fog. Please find me. I continued walking, the shoe clutched in my hand like some kind of talisman. My truck was nowhere in sight now, lost in the fog behind me. The beam of my flashlight caught something ahead. A figure, small and hunched, its back to me. I approached slowly, calling out soft reassurances. Hey there, kid. You lost? I'm here to help. The figure didn't move, didn't turn. It stood perfectly still, a dark silhouette against the gray fog. As I got closer, I could see it was indeed a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing overalls and missing one shoe. Relief flooded through me. This was real, not some hallucination brought on by too many sleepless nights. Hey buddy, I found your shoe, I said, still several feet away. The child's head turned, just slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of its profile. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. No child should have eyes like that, black, impossibly deep, with no whites or iris. No child should have skin that seems to ripple and shift like smoke given temporary form. I stopped dead in my tracks, the shoe dropping from my suddenly numb fingers. The child turned fully toward me now, and I saw that what I had taken for overalls was actually a condition of its body, as if it had been flattened by something massive, broken and reshaped. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, revealing not teeth but a swirling darkness similar to the fog around us. You found me, it said in that child's voice, but now layered with something ancient and hungry. Now I'll find you. I ran. Blind panic propelled me back the way I came, or at least where I thought I'd come from. The fog seemed thicker now, almost solid, pushing against me like hands trying to hold me back. I could hear it behind me, not footsteps but a sound like tearing cloth, growing louder. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but terror kept me moving. I screamed for help, knowing there was no one to hear. The mile marker appeared in my flashlight beam, 387, always 387, no matter which direction I ran. The sound behind me grew closer, and with it came a smell like wet earth and decay. By some miracle, I spotted my truck looming in the fog. I scrambled toward it, fumbling with the door handle, throwing myself into the cab. I locked the doors, started the engine, and floored it, blind to everything but the need to escape. The truck lurched forward, headlights barely penetrating the fog. In my rearview mirror, I saw it, not the child form anymore, but something tall and thin with too many limbs, all angles and sharp edges. It stood in the middle of the road, watching my retreat with those bottomless eyes. I drove like a madman, praying to break free of the fog of mile marker 387. The fog thinned suddenly, like passing through a curtain, and I was back on the clear highway under starlight. I checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me but empty road. My radio came back to life, playing an old country song as if nothing had happened. I was shaking so badly I had to pull over, sitting there for long minutes just breathing, convincing myself it had been some kind of waking nightmare. When I felt steady enough to drive again, I checked my location. According to my GPS, there was no mile marker 387 on this stretch of highway. It jumped from 386 to 388, with nothing in between. I tried to forget about it, to chalk it up to exhaustion or a mini-stroke or something rational. But 3 weeks later I heard the rumors. Another driver had gone missing on the same stretch of road. Then another. All during foggy nights. All last seen near where mile marker 387 should have been. I started researching, digging through newspaper archives and highway records. What I found chilled me to the bone. Every 7 years, drivers disappeared on that stretch. And 7 years before that. And 7 years before that, going back almost a century, to when the highway was first built. The land where the highway now runs used to belong to a small farming community in the 1800s. In 1887, a tragedy occurred, a schoolhouse fire that claimed the lives of 7 children. According to local legend, a traveler had been passing through, telling strange tales and showing the children curious objects. The night after he left, the schoolhouse burned. They found 6 bodies, burned beyond recognition. The 7th child was never found. Just a small red shoe, sitting untouched by the flames in the middle of the destruction. The school had stood exactly where mile marker 387 would later be placed. I tried to warn people, other drivers, the highway patrol, anyone who would listen. Most thought I was crazy or drinking on the job. A few old-timers nodded knowingly but refused to speak of it. Bad luck to talk about the Phantom Mile, one told me, his eyes darting nervously as if someone might be listening. I started avoiding that route, taking longer detours that cut into my pay. I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over, that somehow I'd been marked. Sometimes in the dead of night, my radio would catch snatches of static that sounded almost like a child's voice. 6 months later, a massive pileup forced a detour that took me back to that cursed stretch of highway. It was nearly the 7-year anniversary of the last disappearances. I planned to drive through non-stop in broad daylight with no stops. But mechanical problems and delays meant I was running behind schedule. Darkness fell. And with it came the fog rolling across the highway like a living thing. I watched it approach in my headlights, thick and unnatural. My radio crackled, died, then came back with a burst of static. Through the white noise I heard it, "You found me once. I've been waiting for you to come back." I'm sitting here now, my truck idling on the shoulder just before mile marker 386. The fog is creeping closer, tendrils of it curling around my tires like fingers. My radio is nothing but static. My phone has no signal. In a few minutes I'll have to decide, turn around and flee, knowing it might follow, or drive through and face whatever waits in the Phantom Mile. I can see shapes moving in the fog, tall and angular, with too many limbs. And smaller shapes too, child-sized, prowling at the edges of visibility. I think I know now why some drivers vanish and others, like me, are allowed to escape. It's not random. It's selection. Those who escape are meant to bring others back. I'm writing this down, hoping someone finds it if I don't make it through. If you're driving this route and see mile marker 387, the mile that shouldn't exist, don't stop. Don't slow down. And whatever you do, don't listen to the voices. I've been hauling freight on the midnight runs for nearly a decade. It pays better and the roads are clearer. My rig, a midnight blue Peterbilt I've named Stella, has been my only constant companion through divorce, estrangement, and the general loneliness that comes with this lifestyle. That rainy Tuesday in April started like any other overnight haul from Boise to Sacramento. The patter of rain against the windshield was almost musical, creating a rhythm that kept me alert as I navigated the winding mountain roads. I remember checking my logbook at 2:17 a.m., just minutes before I spotted her, a lone figure standing in the rain, thumb extended, face obscured by a hood. I don't typically pick up hitchhikers. Company policy forbids it, insurance won't cover it, and these days you never know who might be looking to steal your cargo or worse. But something about this one, the way she stood so still in the pouring rain, the isolation of the mountain pass, the fact that the temperature was dropping toward freezing, it tugged at whatever humanity I had left after years on the road. I slowed Stella down, pulling onto the shoulder about 20 feet ahead of the figure. Through my side mirror, I watched as she approached, her movements oddly stiff. She carried no bag, no backpack, just herself in a dark green raincoat that reached her knees. "Where you headed?" I asked as she climbed into the passenger seat, water dripping from her coat onto the floor mat. She pulled back her hood, revealing a young woman's face, maybe mid-20s, with pale skin and dark circles under green eyes that seemed too bright. "Sacramento," she said, her voice barely audible over the engine and rain. "If that's okay." I nodded, signaling before pulling back onto the empty highway. "Got a name?" I asked, attempting small talk to fill the awkward silence. She stared straight ahead, rainwater trailing down her face like tears. "Anna," she finally said. "My name is Anna McIntyre." For the next hour, I made sporadic attempts at conversation. Anna offered minimal responses. She was visiting family, she'd been traveling a while, her car had broken down miles back. Basic hitchhiker stories that didn't explain why she had no luggage, no phone I could see, not even a purse. The rain intensified, becoming a downpour that reduced visibility to mere yards. I switched the wipers to their highest setting, leaning forward as I squinted through the glass. That's when I first noticed something odd. Despite sitting right beside me, Anna cast no reflection in the windshield. I glanced at her quickly, then back at the glass, telling myself it was just a trick of the light. "Mind if I turn on the radio?" I asked, reaching for the dial without waiting for her response. Static hissed from the speakers, unusual since I normally got clear reception on this route. I fiddled with the tuning, finally catching what sounded like a news broadcast. "Continues for Anna McIntyre, age 24, last seen leaving work in Boise 3 days ago. McIntyre's vehicle was found abandoned on Route 55. I felt the blood drain from my face, my fingers suddenly numb on the steering wheel. Beside me, Anna stared straight ahead, seemingly oblivious to the broadcast. I quickly changed the station, finding only more static. "Everything okay?" she asked, turning those two bright eyes toward me. "Fine," I lied, my mind racing. "Just tired." I needed to think. The coincidence was too much. Same name, same route. I reached for my thermos, intentionally fumbling it, spilling a few drops of coffee on the center console. "Sorry," I muttered, grabbing napkins from the glove compartment. As I dabbed at the spill, I managed a sidelong glance at my passenger. In the glow of the dashboard lights, I could now see what I had missed before. Her clothes weren't just wet from rain. Dark stains spread across her raincoat, concentrated around her midsection. She caught me looking and pulled the coat tighter around herself. "It's cold in here," she said. "Can you turn up the heat?" I cranked the heater, buying time as I tried to process what was happening. My phone sat in its holder on the dashboard, but I couldn't call for help without alerting her. If I was right, if this was somehow the missing Anna McIntyre, then who or what was sitting beside me? The rain had tapered off, and as we rounded a bend in the mountain road, moonlight streamed through the windshield, illuminating the cab. That's when I saw it clearly. Anna had no reflection in any of the glass surfaces. Not the windshield, not the passenger window, not even in the rearview mirror where I should have been able to see the back of her head. "Anna," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "when exactly did you say your car broke down?" She turned those unnerving eyes toward me again. "I didn't," she replied softly. "But it was just after midnight. Engine just died on me in the middle of nowhere." I nodded, pretending this was normal conversation. "That stretch of road can be dangerous at night," I continued, testing the waters. "Especially near Broken Ridge Pass." I knew there was no such place, but I needed to see her reaction. Anna smiled for the first time since entering my truck. "That's exactly where it happened," she said. "How did you know?" My hands tightened on the wheel as a chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Just a guess," I managed. We drove in silence for several minutes, the tension in the cab palpable. Then she spoke, her voice somehow different, deeper, resonant in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You know, don't you?" she asked. I said nothing, focusing on the road ahead, calculating how far we were from the next town, the next gas station, anywhere with people. "It's okay," she continued. "I've been looking for someone who could see the truth. The others couldn't. That's why they had to go." "Others?" I echoed, unable to stop myself. Anna turned in her seat to face me fully. "4 drivers before you," she said, as casual as if discussing the weather. "They picked me up just like you did. But they couldn't see what you see. They just saw what they expected to see, a normal girl, a simple hitchhiker." The stains on her coat seemed darker now, spreading as I watched from the corner of my eye. "What happened to them?" I asked, though I feared I already knew. Her smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. "They joined me," she said. "After all, I can't hitchhike alone forever." "What are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. The truck's headlights flickered, dimming momentarily before returning to normal. Anna sighed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "I was like you once," she said. "A driver. These roads were my life. Until that night 3 years ago when I picked up a hitchhiker on this very stretch." She reached out, her fingers hovering near but not touching my arm. I could feel the cold emanating from her, an unnatural chill that penetrated my jacket. "It's a cycle," she continued. "A chain. Each of us was once the driver before we became the passenger." Anna's next words confirmed my worst fears. "My real body is out there somewhere," she said, gesturing toward the darkness beyond the windshield. "Wrapped around a tree at the bottom of the ravine just like the others. The hitchhiker I picked up, he looked so normal, so human. Until he wasn't." The radio suddenly blared to life, cycling through stations too quickly to comprehend, before settling on a weather alert. Flash flood warning in effect for mountain passes with numerous reports of washouts and landslides. Travelers are advised to seek alternate routes. Anna smiled again. "It's almost time," she said. "Can you feel the road changing beneath us?" I felt it, a subtle vibration different from the usual rumble of tires on asphalt. The road ahead seemed to waver, as if viewed through heat distortion, though the night was cold. Anna reached for the wheel. "Let me guide us," she said. "There's a shortcut ahead that doesn't appear on any map." I jerked away from her touch, swerving Stella sharply. For a brief, terrifying moment, the truck fishtailed on the wet road, tires seeking grip. Anna didn't seem concerned. "You can't avoid this," she said. 5 drivers before you tried. All of them thought they were special, that they alone could break the cycle. All of them were wrong." I had to think fast. The next turn was less than a mile ahead, a rest area I'd stopped at dozens of times before. If I could just make it there where other truckers might be parked overnight? Anna seemed to read my thoughts. "No one will see me," she said. "No one but you. That's how it works." Her hand moved toward the wheel again, and this time I didn't just pull away. I hit the brakes hard, sending Stella into a controlled skid. Anna's form lurched forward, but instead of being constrained by the seatbelt she wasn't wearing, she moved through it, her body momentarily losing solidity. It was the distraction I needed. I yanked the wheel, sending us careening toward the approaching rest area turnoff. I've spent 3 months trying to forget that night. The way Anna's form dissipated like smoke when I skidded into that brightly lit rest area. The news reports I found later, confirming that Anna McIntyre's body had been discovered in her car at the bottom of a ravine, exactly where no ravine should have been. The mechanic's confusion when he could find nothing wrong with my truck's electrical system or radio. Sometimes, on late-night hauls, my radio still catches fragments of voices between stations. I've changed my route, avoid mountain passes when I can. But the worst part? The part that keeps me awake even in cheap motel rooms with the lights blazing? Every time I catch a glimpse of my reflection now, in the windshield, in the mirror, in a store window, I see her standing just behind me, waiting. And I know with bone-deep certainty that someday, perhaps when I'm least expecting it, I'll pick up another lonely hitchhiker. And the cycle will continue. I never wanted to be a trucker. The open road held no romance for me, no promise of freedom or adventure. But when my old man died suddenly of a heart attack at 58, he left me three things: his ancient Kenworth W900, a mountain of debt, and no other marketable skills. So at 26, I found myself behind the wheel of that beast, hauling whatever loads I could find to keep the creditors at bay. The rig was a relic, all chrome and steel from the early 90s, with an outdated CB radio that Dad had insisted was the only way real truckers communicate. I'd planned to replace it with something modern, but funds were tight. Little did I know that ancient radio would become my connection to something I still can't fully explain. It happened 3 months into my reluctant career, on a stretch of highway cutting through the Nevada desert. It was just past 3 a.m., that hollow time when the world feels emptied of life. The CB had been quiet for hours, just occasional static and distant fragments of conversation as I passed other night haulers. I was fighting sleep, windows down despite the chill, when the radio crackled to life. Breaker 1 to 9 for the Kenworth with the red stripe. Come back. The voice was male, gravelly, like someone who'd smoked too many cigarettes over too many years. I hesitated before responding. I hadn't told anyone my location, and the red stripe was specific to Dad's truck. This is the Kenworth. Who's asking? The radio hissed with static for so long I thought the connection had broken. Then, got a warning for you, driver. Bad stretch ahead. Take the next exit. I squinted through the windshield at the empty highway stretching before me. What kind of bad stretch? I asked. Accident? Construction? More static, then the voice returned, somehow closer, as if the speaker were right beside me instead of in some distant truck. Death stretch, the voice said flatly. Roads hungry tonight. I snorted, assuming it was some veteran driver hazing the newbie. Right, I responded. I'll keep an eye out for man-eating asphalt. The radio went silent again, but the static remained, a persistent hiss that sounded almost like distant whispers. 10 minutes later, I passed a sign for exit 156, the next exit the voice had mentioned. I kept driving, determined not to be rattled by CB ghost stories. I almost missed seeing it. A dark shape sprawled across the right lane about a quarter-mile ahead. I hit the brakes hard, the trailer swinging slightly before I regained control. As I slowed, my headlights illuminated the gruesome scene. A massive pileup, at least 5 vehicles, glass and metal scattered across both lanes. No emergency vehicles, no flares, no warning signs, just destruction in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The CB crackled again. Told you, said the voice, no longer gravelly but smooth, almost amused. Should have listened. I ignored it, putting on my hazards and grabbing my flashlight. As I approached the wreckage on foot, something felt wrong. The cars were mangled beyond recognition, but there was no movement, no sounds of pain or calls for help. I was 10 feet from the nearest vehicle when my flashlight beam caught a face in the shattered window, pale, bloodied, eyes open and staring directly at me. I called out, rushing forward, but as I reached the car, the beam of light passed through empty space. The wreckage was gone, completely vanished, leaving me standing alone on empty asphalt. I spun around, heart pounding, flashlight beam cutting wild arcs through the darkness. Nothing. No debris, no skid marks, not even a trace of broken glass. I backed toward my truck, keeping the light trained on the spot where the accident had been. The CB radio was squawking from the cab, that same voice now calling my name, my actual name which I'd never shared over the airwaves. I climbed back into the cab with shaking hands, staring at the radio as it continued to say my name, over and over, like a chant. I reached out and switched it off. The voice continued. I yanked the power cord from the unit. The voice continued. I grabbed the handset, and the moment my skin touched the plastic, a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, not painful but invasive, as if something were flowing into me rather than through me. Who are you? I demanded, my voice cracking. The radio fell silent for 3 long seconds. Then, I'm the one who came before. Just like you'll be the one who comes before the next. We're all just links in the chain, kid. Dad. I whispered, a cold weight settling in my stomach. The laugh that came through the speaker was familiar and foreign all at once, carrying echoes of my father's distinctive chuckle but layered with other sounds, other laughs, other voices. Not just him, the radio replied. Though he's here. We're all here. Every driver who ever owned this rig, who ever spoke through this radio. The road claims us all eventually. My hands were numb now, still clutching the handset like it was a lifeline instead of the thing drowning me. That's not possible, I said. Dad bought this truck new. He was the only owner. The voices laughed again. Time doesn't work the same way in here, kid. The truck found him just like it found you. Just like it'll find the next when you join us. I tried to drop the handset but my fingers wouldn't respond, frozen in place as if fused to the plastic. Images began to flood my mind. A different highway, a different decade, the same truck. A younger version of my father, fighting sleep just as I had been. A sudden swerving shape on the road ahead, a desperate turn of the wheel. But instead of the crash I expected to see, there was a strange rippling in the air like heat distortion. The truck passed through it and something passed into my father. Then another vision. A woman I didn't recognize in a version of the truck that looked even older, though that wasn't possible. The same ripple, the same transfer. Driver after driver, death after death that wasn't quite death. We're the guardians, the voice explained as the visions faded, leaving me gasping in the cab. We watch for the thin places, the hungry stretches where the barriers break down. We warn those we can, guide them safely through. The ones we can't save join us. I found my voice again, hoarse and small in the empty cab. The accident I saw? The radio hissed. Echo of what might have been. What would have been if you hadn't slowed down? The road wants its due, but we've learned to negotiate. To offer alternatives. A chill ran through me. What alternatives? The voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Others. Not us. Not drivers. We protect our own. Dawn was breaking, pale light spreading across the desert landscape. I'd been sitting in the stopped truck for hours, listening as the voice, the collective consciousness of dead truckers, if I could believe it, explained the rules. The CB radio was their conduit, their way of reaching out to the living. They protected drivers from the hungry stretches, places where reality thinned and something waited to feed on the living. In exchange, they needed me to help direct other travelers, non-truckers, into those same stretches. Balance, the voice insisted. The road needs souls. If not ours, then others. I shook my head, finally able to release the handset. I won't do it. I won't kill innocent people. The radio went silent, then emitted a high-pitched whine that made me cover my ears. When it spoke again, it was with my father's voice alone. No layers, no distortion, just Dad as I remembered him. Son, you don't understand what we're up against. Let me show you. The truck's engine started by itself, gears engaging. I grabbed the wheel, but it turned of its own accord, pulling us back onto the highway. We drove for 20 minutes, the radio silent, until we reached a rest area where several cars and an RV were parked. Watch, Dad's voice instructed. As I stared, one of the car's headlights flicked on, though no one was inside. Its engine started, and it pulled out of the rest area, a family running after it, confused and shouting. They're already marked, Dad's voice explained as we followed the seemingly empty car. The hungry stretch calls to them, pulls them in. With or without our help, they're already dead. But if we guide them properly, make sure they reach the right spot at the right time, their energy feeds the road and keeps it from seeking us out. I watched in helpless horror as the family piled into their second vehicle and pursued their runaway car. Both vehicles headed toward a section of highway that looked normal to my eyes but made the radio emit a steady, low hum. You'll learn to see them, Dad promised. The thin places. Right now you need our help, but eventually you'll spot them on your own. We parked on a bluff overlooking the stretch of highway. Below, both family vehicles approached the spot the radio was humming about. I lunged for the handset. I can warn them, I said desperately. Tell them to turn around. The collective voice returned, drowning out my father's individual tones. Choose carefully, it warned. The balance must be maintained. Save them and someone else pays the price. Maybe you. Maybe another driver. The road will have its due. I looked down at the family, parents and 2 kids in their second car, following their empty first vehicle toward something I couldn't see but knew was waiting. I thought about other truckers, men and women just trying to make a living. I thought about my father, somehow trapped in this radio, this truck, this endless cycle of death and protection. There has to be another way, I insisted, knuckles white around the handset. Something else we can feed it. The voices conferred, a murmuring jumble too complex to follow. Finally they spoke as one. There are alternatives. The truly wicked. Those who prey on others. The road doesn't care what it consumes, only that it consumes. A terrible understanding dawned on me. You want me to find bad people? Murderers and such? Lead them to these thin places instead. The radio hummed. Now you understand. Not innocent families. Not fellow drivers. But those who deserve what waits in the hungry stretches. It's a harder path. Takes more time. More patience. But possible. Below, the family had stopped their pursuit, turning around after their runaway car disappeared around a bend. Something had made them reconsider, perhaps a warning from another guardian I couldn't hear. It's been 2 years since that night. 2 years of driving with my father's voice, and the voices of countless others, guiding me through the CB radio that I now understand is something far older and stranger than it appears. I've learned to spot the thin places myself, the hungry stretches where reality wears thin and something waits to feed. I've learned to divert my fellow drivers around these spots. And I've learned to find suitable alternatives. Hitchhikers with blood on their hands, fugitives fleeing crimes too horrible to contemplate, predators of all kinds who roam the highways looking for victims and instead find me. Is it murder? Perhaps. But I tell myself it's justice, balance, protection for those who deserve protecting. The CB crackles constantly now, a chorus of the dead keeping me company as I drive through the dark. Sometimes I wonder what will happen when my time comes, when I join the collective in that ancient radio. Will my voice guide the next reluctant guardian? Will the truck find its way to them as it somehow found its way to each of us? The road stretches endlessly before me, and somewhere ahead, I know, a thin place waits. They say some routes are cursed. Old-timers at truck stops talk about them in hushed voices, warning rookies to request different assignments. I've been driving 18-wheelers for 15 years and always dismissed these stories as trucker folklore, until I was assigned Route 177 through the Appalachian Mountains. A simple job: deliver factory equipment from Pittsburgh to Charlotte, a 16-hour straight shot that should have been routine. The dispatcher mentioned the route had a high turnover rate, drivers requesting transfers after completing it, but offered a 20% bonus for taking it. Money talks louder than superstition in this economy, so I accepted without hesitation. The first 8 hours were uneventful, just winding mountain roads and spectacular autumn scenery. Then night fell, and I approached the way station at mile marker 177. Department of Transportation regulations required me to stop at all open way stations, and this one showed the illuminated open sign despite the late hour and remote location. I pulled in, noticing immediately how different it looked from other stations I'd visited: older architecture, almost like something from the 1950s, with a small brick building beside the scales. No other trucks were present, unusual for an operational station. I eased my rig onto the scale and waited for the indicator light to change from red to green, signaling I could proceed to the office with my paperwork. The light remained red, though my weight reading seemed normal on the display. After 5 minutes, I sighed, grabbed my logbook, and headed to the small office. Someone inside would need to clear me. The office door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a Spartan interior: just a desk, a few metal filing cabinets, and a single occupant. The inspector sat with his back to me, hunched over paperwork. "Evening," I called out. Scales not giving me the green light. The figure turned slowly, and I fought to keep my expression neutral. The inspector's face was gaunt to the point of emaciation, skin stretched tight over prominent bones, eyes sunken into dark hollows. Despite his unsettling appearance, his uniform was immaculate, a perfectly pressed DOT uniform that looked decades out of date. "Weight discrepancy," he said, his voice a dry whisper. "Your manifest shows cargo at 38,000 pounds. Scale reads 42,615. I frowned, pulling out my shipping manifest. That can't be right. I watched them load it myself. The inspector's thin lips stretched into what might have been a smile. "Weight doesn't lie, driver. You're carrying something not on your manifest." He slid a form across the desk. "Declaration of unregistered cargo. Fill it out." I stared at the yellowed paper, its format unlike any DOT form I'd ever seen. "Look, there must be some mistake. Can we recalibrate the scale?" The inspector's sunken eyes held mine. "No mistake. You're carrying extra weight. All drivers do, whether they know it or not. The question is whether you're willing to declare it." Something in his tone made my skin crawl, a hint of anticipation, almost hunger. Against my better judgment, I took the form and began examining it. The questions were bizarre. Describe the nature of your burden. When did you first notice the additional weight? Are you willing to relinquish what you carry? None of this made sense in terms of physical cargo. I looked up to question the inspector, only to find him watching me with unblinking intensity. I don't understand what you're asking for, I admitted. He nodded as if expecting this response. Everyone carries weight that doesn't appear on manifests, driver. Guilt, regret, secrets, memories too heavy to bear. This station measures what you've picked up along life's highway. I laughed nervously. You're saying this scale weighs emotional baggage? That's crazy. His expression remained unchanged. 4,615 pounds of it in your case. Quite substantial. I should have walked out then, reported the station for whatever game they were playing. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. So what happens if I fill out this form? You can't exactly confiscate my emotional baggage. The inspector opened a filing cabinet, removing a thick folder. Others have asked the same question. Perhaps their experiences will clarify. He slid the folder toward me. Inside were dozens of forms like the one before me, each filled out in different handwriting. I read through several, a chill spreading through me with each page. Drivers confessing to affairs, abandoned children, accidents where they'd fled the scene, violence, addiction, the darkest aspects of their lives detailed in shaking script. But what disturbed me most were the notes added at the bottom of each form in the inspector's meticulous handwriting. Cargo accepted. Weight reduced to acceptable limits. Driver proceeded. What is this place? I whispered, pushing the folder away. The inspector closed it carefully, returning it to the cabinet. A-way station as advertised. Just not for what you thought. He gestured toward the window. Through it, I could see my truck still sitting on the scale, but from this angle, something was different. Shadowy shapes seemed to writhe around it, pressing down on the trailer, clinging to the cab. I blinked hard, but the vision remained. Those who stop here have a choice, the inspector continued. Declare their burdens and leave them behind, or keep carrying them until the weight becomes prohibitive. I thought about the turnover rate for this route, the drivers who requested transfers after completing it. Had they all stopped here? Had they all seen what I was seeing? I'm not playing this game, I said, standing abruptly. I'm leaving. The inspector remained seated, unmoved by my defiance. You can try. Many do. The door isn't locked. His bony finger pointed to the exit. I strode toward it, yanked it open, and stepped outside, only to find myself somehow back at my truck, standing beside the driver's door. Confused, I turned in a complete circle. The way station office was behind me, exactly as before. I'd gone nowhere. I tried again, walking away from the scale toward the highway. After 20 steps, I was back at my truck. The inspector had followed me outside, watching with those hollow eyes. The weight anchors you here, he explained. No one leaves until they're within legal limits. Dawn broke as I finished writing, pages of admissions and regrets covering the desk between us. The inspector read each one silently, occasionally nodding. Substantial, he commented. Particularly this. He tapped a paragraph where I described my greatest shame, refusing a dying father's call because I couldn't afford to miss a delivery deadline, learning of his passing via voicemail. The heaviest burdens are often those things left undone or unsaid. He gathered the papers, placed them in a new folder with my name on it, and filed it away. Step outside now. Check your weight. Skeptical but desperate to leave, I followed his instruction. The scale's display had changed, 38,000 pounds exactly. The light above it had turned green. I don't feel any different, I told the inspector, who had followed me to the scale. He nodded as if this were expected. The unburdening isn't instantaneous, but you've initiated the process. The weight will diminish gradually as you fulfill certain conditions. He handed me a sealed envelope. Instructions. Open it after you've completed your current delivery. I took the envelope reluctantly. What if I just throw this away once I'm out of here? The hint of a smile touched his lips again. You won't. And if you did, you'd find yourself back here soon enough, with even more weight to declare. The road always leads back to those who need us. He gestured toward the exit. You're free to go. Your burden is now officially recognized and in process of removal. I completed my Charlotte delivery in a daze, sleep-deprived and rattled by my experience at the way station. Once the cargo was unloaded, I parked at a truck stop and opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a list, names, addresses, and brief notes. With dawning horror, I realized these were people from my past, those I'd wronged or abandoned or failed in some way. Beside each name was a specific action: tell her the real reason you left. Return what you borrowed. Deliver the apology in person. At the bottom was a warning: failure to complete these actions will result in weight returning twofold. Return to station 177 in 1 year for reassessment. I crumpled the paper, then smoothed it out again, staring at the first name on the list. My ex-wife, just 2 hours from my current location. Over the next year, I found myself on a different kind of long-haul journey, one measured not in miles but in confrontations with my past. Some were relatively easy: returning borrowed items, sending overdue payments, making neglected phone calls. Others were excruciating: sitting across from my ex-wife and admitting my failures, standing at my father's grave and speaking the words he should have heard while living, facing the former friend whose trust I'd betrayed. After each completed task, I experienced the strangest sensation: a lightness, as if gravity had slightly decreased. I began weighing myself at regular stations along my routes. Normal weight always. But I knew better now: there were different kinds of scales in this world, measuring different kinds of burdens. Exactly 1 year later, my route mysteriously changed, sending me back through the Appalachian Mountains. I wasn't surprised to find myself approaching mile marker 177 as darkness fell. The open sign glowed in the night, just as before. This time I didn't hesitate, pulling directly onto the scale. The display read 38,000 pounds, my truck and cargo, nothing more. The light shone green immediately. I should have continued on, but curiosity drew me back to the small brick building. The same inspector sat at the desk, appearing not a day older or different. "You've returned," he observed, unsurprised. "I've completed everything on the list," I told him, placing the worn paper on his desk. He examined it, checking off each item. "Satisfactory," he concluded. "You're now within regulation weight limits." As I turned to leave, the inspector called after me. "One moment." He held out a small, worn leather-bound book. "For you." I accepted it cautiously, opening to find blank pages except for the first, which contained a list of names. "What's this?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "You've experienced the unburdening," he replied. "Now you've qualified to help others do the same." He gestured toward the highway beyond the station. "Watch for them. The overloaded. The dangerously burdened. Guide them here when you can." I stared at the book, understanding dawning. "You want me to recruit for you?" His hollow eyes seemed to see through me. "I was once a driver too," he said quietly. "We all were at the beginning. This station has existed as long as there have been roads, though its form changes with the times. It will always need guardians who understand the weight." I left with the book in my pocket, feeling its presence like a small stone. Now, as I drive the long highways, I notice things I never saw before: the shadows clinging to certain vehicles, the way some drivers' shoulders stoop under invisible weight. Sometimes I find myself casually suggesting alternate routes that pass by mile marker 177. Sometimes I share stories at truck stops about a strange way station that changed my life. And sometimes, late at night, I spot headlights in my mirror that disappear when I look too closely. Other guardians, I suspect, doing the same work on different roads. We're all just way stations ourselves, helping carry and distribute the weight of human existence, one journey at a time.